welcome back to part 3. At this point, we should have a target launcher that is launching 3 different types of random targets, and each of these 3 different random targets each has their own speed. Now we're going to come back to these targets later because right now we can't hit them and we haven't set up their health system. But what we want to do for a little while here now is create the guns for the game. Specifically in this tutorial we're going to look at how to swap between the guns. So what I'm going to do is come back over to my first person controller. Note that I've got the camera and everything. This is just a standard first person controller sitting there. And I'm going to start to get my guns out into the scene. Now we're going to do some things a little bit different as time goes on, but a lot of this should be review. I'm going to come out and bring my pistol out into the scene, which will probably be the wrong size, but let's come and make it a child of the first person controller here for a second. And I'm just going to zero all of that out just for the moment so that we can get that in a good place. Now I'm going to go ahead and do some rotation so that it's in a good place. Let's go ahead and scale this so that it makes reasonable size for a character that's essentially 6 feet tall or so. Let's go ahead and get that into spot here for what we want. So that's good. I'm going to hide that for a moment. And then I'm going to go and grab my RPG. Let's make that a child of this as well. Now the RPG looks like it's itty bitty tiny, so I'm going to also rotate it by 90 degrees, scale it up so that it makes sense for what we should be able to see in this scene. I'm gonna hip fire this as well. Maybe I'll make this. I'm going to pull it back there so that I can't see because I don't have hands set up here. I'm going to hide that one. And then finally, let's bring in the pigeon-seeking missile. That should all be 0. It looks like it's really tiny as well. So let's go ahead and scale that thing up. I'm going to go ahead and bring it into position so that it makes sense here. Now again, we're having some of the same issue here with the clipping, so I'm going to make sure that the clipping plane, let's pull that back down so that it's quite a bit smaller. Okay, so maybe this will be larger. Maybe we'll let it take up a bit more of the space. So let's see how it is in relationship to that. That's probably a reasonable size. And then in relationship to the pistol, that's probably a reasonable size as well. Okay, so here's the deal. We've got all these set up. I'm probably going to come in and adjust the shaders. You probably should too, so that they look more like what you want. But as we start to look at these, some of the problems that we've got is I want to have all of these so that they drop out of the view, and then when I press 1, the pistol comes up. When I press 2, the RPG comes up. When I press 3, the PSM comes up and hides each of the other ones on each case. The problem here though is that as we look at the pistol, if I grab the pistol and I start, here let me hide these other 2 so we can see it, is that if I start with this pistol and I start rotating that thing, then you see how it doesn't rotate out of the view because of where its axis is. Further, you can see that the angle that I'm rotating that at is in the Z, whereas I'm looking at something like the PSM, I'm rotating that one, and that one's rotating in the X, and it's rotating all sorts of weird here. So that doesn't do quite what we want. So what I want to start to do is I'm going to make a new pivot. I'm going to make a new pivot for each of these to actually rotate from. So I'm just going to hide all of these for a second. Meanwhile, I'm going to come in, select on my camera. I'm going to go ahead and make an empty game object. And this I'm going to call my pivot pistol. And I'm going to make sure that it is actually a child of the first person controller and that its values all match at 0. Now, there might be some other things that I might do here, but let's take a look at the default settings here, just making sure that's at 0. If I make sure that my pivot is a child of that pivot pistol and make sure and turn that on, what will happen now is as I rotate that pistol out, do you see how that actually drops right out of the scene? and moves itself out. Now that is going to be kind of an easy way to kind of take care of sliding all of these out of the way. So again, let's make another game object. I'm going to make sure that this is my pivot. This one will be called my RPG. And then while I'm here, I'm just going to duplicate this one and call this pivot PSM. I'm going to make sure that both of these are a child of the camera, and then I'll make sure that my PSM is a child of that, and my RPG is a child of that. So even if I turn all these on, let's turn them all on for a second. What this should mean is that as I'm rotating the pivot pistol, I can't see these others, so let's turn those off. So as I rotate my pistol, not from the pistol, but from this pivot, right, then it drops out. Let's check these others. So RPG, I'm looking at it again from, oh, that should be, looks like I didn't zero those out. Let's move these out here for a second. Okay, so the pivot RPG needs to be at 0, 0, 0 in relationship to that. And then my PSM pivot also needs to be at 0, 0, 0 in relationship to the camera. Okay, so PSM, RPG, both as children of those. Okay, so if I'm looking at my RPG, then I can look at how that's going to rotate. So that'll drop right out. That looks good. And then let's take a look at the PSM. Let's turn that on. And so it rotates right out. Now the beauty of these is that since all of these are at the same place, then it means that they all rotate along the same x-axis, which is really nice. So we've got these 3 pivots for each of those. I'm going to turn each of these on. It's going to look like a mess, kind of all of them kind of sitting all on top of each other for now. That's okay. We're going to take care of that in our script as they drop out. Okay, so let's make a new script here that I'm going to call my weapons script. Now, we've up to this point been mostly working with the idea of attaching a script to the objects it actually affects, but we've been a little bit different in this project. Namely, we put our target script on this script holder. So the script holder is actually controlling our target. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my weapon script also on the script holder so that I've got one place that's holding all of the scripts, and I'm going to have this script holder actually doing the movements of all of these as well. Okay, so let's go look at that weapon script, and we can start to look at what's happening here. So a few things that I'm going to want to make sure is this needs to know where all those pivots are. So I'm going to make a I'm going to make a public game object that I'm going to call pivot pistol. I'm going to make another one. It's going to be pivot RPG, and another one that's going to be called pivot PSM. Now remember, these are the parent objects of the actual guns, so that they're set up. Now I'm going to make a function that my own function that I'm going to be able to call out. So I'm going to make this function called swap weapons. Now, I'm not going to use any sort of delays or waits in here, so I don't have to make this an IEnumerator. But the idea is that multiple times I can call out to this swap weapons method, my own method, that will allow me to swap the weapons. So what I'm going to do is every time I call out swap weapons, I'm going to have it put all of the weapons down, and I'm going to have it slide up or rotate up the weapon that I want to be able to see. So I'm going to do this with itween.rotate2. And what I'll do here is let's do this with pivot pistol first. Pivot pistol. And then let's use the itween.hash table arguments. And let's come in here, and we know that we're going to be rotating in X. So let's find out what we're going to do here. So I'm going to rotate that down to, let's say 70 degrees. Okay, so a positive 70 degrees. So let's come back over here, and we'll say rotate that in X to a positive 70. Let's do a time of, I don't know. 0.5. We'll try something real fast. We might adjust this as time goes on. We definitely want to use is local. So we want that to be true. And finally, let's go ahead and use an ease type of spring as well. We might choose to do that a little bit more sophisticated as well. But let's go ahead and save that. So the idea here is that all of this, I can call that out whenever I want. So let's make sure that we do that in the start. And so what I'll do is I'll just say, hey, go ahead and swap weapons, which all it's going to do for right now is go ahead and rotate that pistol down. Okay, let's come back over here and tie everything up. So in the script holder, if we don't have any syntax errors, then we should be able to select the script holder. It should be asking for who our, let's go ahead and close some of this down, who our pivot pistol is, who our pivot PSM is, and who our pivot RPG is. So we've got all of those set up. Okay, so what will happen right now is pretty exciting. All it should do is actually just put the pistol down. So when I hit play, then when it plays, rotates that pistol down. Okay, so if I know that that works, then I can do the same thing for all the rest of these. So let's come in here and do all the rest of those. I'm just going to tab that stuff over there so it's a little bit easier to read. And this one will be pivot PSM. Oops. Pivot PSM, and let's do this one with pivot RPG. So what this should do now is that when this is done compiling, when I hit play, then because my script is calling this method out right at the start, then it should go and rotate all three of these down in fairly rapid succession. So it should do them all three at once. So if I hit play, and when the game starts, then they all get put away. All right. So, which is great, but what I really want to have happen is that when I press, say, 1 on my keyboard, then I want the pistol to show up. So I'll do this in the update. So in the update, I'm going to say if input dot get key down, get key down, and what I'm going to use is key code. Let's use alpha 1. We can use our mouse later if we want to do this. But here, let's go ahead and start to say hit 1. Let's make sure that our inputs are working. So I'm going to grab those. Let's copy that, paste that, paste that. So this will be alpha 2. This will be alpha 3, so that I've got those. So if I save those, oops, let's make sure that I change these prints. All right. So if I come back over to Unity, I'm just looking to make sure that my inputs work fine. So when I press play, it'll put all of the guns away like we know, and as I press 1, I've hit 1, I can see it down in the console. 2, I've hit 2, 3, I've hit 3, so that I know that my inputs are working out. Okay, so in each of these I don't really want print. What I wanted to do is I wanted to put all of these away, and then I wanted to show another one. So what I'm going to do is when I'm putting all of these away, I'm going to come down and I'm going to make one more iTween rotate 2. And in this iTween rotate 2, what I'm going to do here is instead of giving it a specific one, let's create an argument here that means that it expects to find out the gun to show. So every time we call out swap weapons, we should call down to the gun to show. So here we're going to tell this, in this case, after it's put all of them away, that it's going to take whatever the gun to show is, and it's going to rotate its X back up to 0 so that it actually shows the element. All right, so what this will do is this will, of course, break this. But here we can start to say, look, at the start of the game, I want you to make sure, let's go ahead and make sure that pistol pivot, that the pistol is the first thing that we're showing. Now, what it means, though, is that I can use the same thing everywhere. So here I can come down, let's paste that there. Here I'm going to paste that there, and here I'm going to paste that here. But here, when I hit 2, I want it to use pivot RPG, And here I wanted to use pivot PSM. So I press 1, it will go swap weapons and pass pivot pistol down to it. So what it does is when I hit 1, it puts all of them away and then shows gun to show, which I've passed down as pivot pistol, and so it will rotate that up. Or when I press 2, it does the same thing, but instead gun to show in this case will be the RPG. 3, then the gun to show will be the PSM. All right, so let's save that. Come back over here so that we can see what happens. What should happen here is that when we start, since we have it in the start, it should put all of them away except for the pistol. So when I press play, all of these will be put away except for the pistol. Should be good. And then when I press 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I can see how all of these work. All right. So it looks like all of those are working fine. So why don't you go ahead and get to this point. You might do some other adjustments to the shaders on these to make them look more like you want, and then we'll look at the next step.